There is something that we haven't been telling you, and we feel like in the interest of honesty and transparency, we need to divulge this information, and that's going to be the center point of today's episode. For the last 6 years, Ben and I at Sounds Like a Drum have set our sights on changing the landscape of drum videos, and specifically what a drum video is, what it could be, and what we saw as a deficiency in the entire internet in terms of information about what real drum sounds are, how you get them, and exactly what you're hearing when you think you're hearing real drum sounds in other videos. When we say the phrase drum video, we're specifically referring to any video you might see that is trying to sell you a drum, compare two drums or some aspect of drum sound, drum heads, anything where you're expected to glean information from viewing it that will give you an idea of the nature of that instrument. From time to time, and frankly more often than we might have expected, we get comments pertaining to the nature of the sounds that we create here with sometimes critiques or just ideas about a viewer's expectation of what a drum is going to sound like when they watch a video on YouTube or elsewhere on the internet versus what they sound like from our studio. This has led us to realize that there are some things that go on here that we intimate and mention in videos, but we want to dive into today that are specific to why we do things the way we do them here for the purpose of giving the viewer the best information about instruments, sounds, how to achieve them, and exactly what else is going on in other places on the internet that is either unintentionally or sometimes willfully deceptive. While we've tried to be the change that we want to see in the online drum community, we also want to issue a broad sweeping and direct call to action for anyone else that is demoing drums, whether you are a manufacturer, a retailer, or a player, influencer, whatever, to get closer to the idea that you need to be sharing accurate information and to not let anything get in the way of the true sound of the instrument so the viewers are getting exactly what they need to when they watch that video. First, we want to discuss the way that we demo instruments on this channel. So we're going to give you a demonstration of the way that we do demonstrations. We do a specific and consistent dynamic demonstration every time we have an instrument on the snare stand, and in this case a snare drum, so that you understand exactly what's happening from the very lowest to the very highest dynamics and everything in between. Next, we do 4 center hits at a high dynamic followed by a rim shot. This is to fully demonstrate back to back what happens when you strike the drum really hard repeatedly. Next, we do another dynamic demonstration of a press roll or a buzz roll folded into a double stroke roll that ends with a rim shot. This moves from the edge of the drum to the center so that you can hear the behavior of the wires at the edge to the center through the dynamic range all the way to the top. These are the consistent demonstrations that we always do with a snare drum, regardless of whether it's a drum demo, a head demo, or some kind of tuning comparison. Additionally, under certain contexts, we will also do snares off demos, cross stick demos, or anything else that might pertain specifically to the instrument we have that day. We get a tremendous amount of requests for some kind of scientific metric, a drum dial setting, or a frequency as a representation of the sound of the instrument for the viewer. The fact of the matter is that the demonstrations up to this point are a far more effective method of understanding the sound of the instrument, and then you can use that along with your ear to adjust your instrument at home, where you learn to make the sound and also learn the capabilities and other facets of your own drum. We choose these methods not to be gatekeepers, but instead the very opposite. We are choosing this to avoid misleading you and getting you further away from the ultimate sound goal that you're looking for. There are so many other variables that fold into the ultimate sound of a drum beyond the literal tension or note of a drum head. And if we discount those things and rely on a single number or a single metric, we are missing the greater picture. Lastly, and very importantly, we furnish the sound of this drum in the context of a groove so you can hear how it fits in with the rest of the kit. You may notice that in these demos, the playing is very simple and very consistent and not very flashy at all. This is important to note because at the end of the day, these are not performance videos and my ego is not present here for any of this, nor is Ben's. This is about sharing with you a sound in a way where you actually get to hear it clearly. And we put other interstitial material in here to display the drum in other musical contexts and broaden the scope a little bit. But ultimately, this is the very opposite of a video that's meant to be watched for flash and excitement and performance itself. These are about the drum and we want to keep it that way. For those of you that have been with us for a while, you may know that we have a Patreon account in addition to this YouTube channel. It is the best way to help us continue to get to make these videos, and we have a tremendous amount of exclusive content over on that platform. This includes deep dives that don't exist on YouTube, a lot of extra content and playing examples from a lot of our videos. We even have a cymbal series that you may have seen a couple of episodes from cropping up on the YouTube channel. There's over 30 episodes over there and they are ad-free to rifle through. Tons of fun stuff. So please follow the link below and check it out. There's a tremendous amount of content on the internet by much more flashy players or people that are choosing to play this kind of way, perhaps on a signature instrument or that they are just demonstrating for you, which can take you completely away from the nature of that instrument and get you into a mindset where you're more preoccupied with the player and what they're playing than the sound of the instrument that they're supposed to be demonstrating. This is a super effective marketing idea because it takes you away from really analyzing the product and gives you a feeling and a sensation of that player and their chops and their sound and pulling you toward that. And then the instrument becomes like a conduit for you being more like them. Think of it. Buy this product, be like this person. Buy this product, now you're authentic enough for this particular gig. Buy this even more expensive product, you become even more authentic or better or more professional, which is super dangerous. Thinking about younger players or people who just by virtue of their life don't have the kind of disposable income required to even get medium quality instruments, it fosters a pretty toxic environment, and it fosters an environment where we think we need more to be better, when in reality, we need to work on being better. More is not going to get us anything except more. This is a true form of gatekeeping, where there is actually something made inaccessible or out of reach on purpose to drive people toward wanting that thing, creating an envy and a covetous atmosphere where you feel inadequate if you don't have this thing that's going to make you what you feel like you should be. It's been my experience working with drummers and teaching them lessons that the average person who owns an entry-level or a relatively low-cost snare drum has no idea what it's capable of while they sit back, scroll on the internet, and consider the possibilities of a drum that's $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 as if their sound is in that drum when they haven't really spent any time with the one they have yet, just because they feel like it's not as special or fancy or whatever. Ultimately, there are a lot of implied barriers to entry for all sorts of facets of the industry that don't really exist. A great one for us to talk about right now is the idea of being a session musician. What do you need? Do you need 10 snare drums? Do you need 5 drum sets? Do you need a cymbal endorsement or cartage? Well, the bottom line is if you do sessions, then you're a session musician. Again, I'm going to repeat that. If you do sessions, you're a session musician. It doesn't matter what stuff you have, how much or how little. What really matters is that you are qualified in your playing, your taste, and your knowledge of what you do have to get the job done, make everybody happy, and get called again. On the other hand, if you have a vast drum collection curated and wonderful and displayed, maybe you're not a session musician. Maybe you're a collector or an aficionado. Maybe you just love the drums themselves, the thing that it is. That's okay too. One is not covering up the other. However, it's easy to think that you have to be a certain thing or have a certain thing in order to give yourself the moniker of the job that you do. But again, if you do sessions, you're a session musician. If you play shows, you're a musician. If you don't play shows and you like playing music at home, you're still a musician. There are no actual barriers to entry here. It's just a matter of what you're working on, what you like to do, and what you're choosing to do with it. On the other hand, if you have a vast collection of drums and you love them to death, but you don't do sessions, then perhaps you're a collector. The bottom line is that the gear does not a session drummer make. A session drummer might have one snare drum, a collector might have 50. Both are absolutely fine. Thanks for staying with us. We have some more things to talk about. And the next one has to do with the actual sounds, the way that our sounds sound, literally, on this channel. One of the main critiques that we hear when we get comments about what we do here is that our drum sounds don't sound like other YouTube videos. And when we press further and say, do you mean this episode? The viewer will say, no, all of your episodes, they all sound the same, but they sound different than other channels. The reason for this, which is mentioned in virtually every episode, is that we don't do any kind of EQ or compression or dramatic post-production to our drum sounds because what we want to give you is the closest we can possibly get to what we are hearing right here at the drums. This is diametrically opposed to any kind of video that's trying to draw you in and wow you with drum sounds because there's a massive amount of things you can do to a drum sound to make it seem louder and more aggressive and bigger and more powerful and more professional or whatever adjective you want to use. And let's set aside people who are just playing on the internet and demonstrating the stuff they have at home. We actually have evidence that manufacturers are EQing, compressing, and sometimes supplementing with samples the audio of instruments on videos that are meant to show you that instrument's sound so that you will buy it. This is fundamentally disingenuous because what they're saying is that if you buy this, you will have this sound at home, and that is fundamentally impossible. This is not to say that we can even give you exactly down to the barest minutia the sound that we have in this room because again, we are recording and we're delivering you a recording, but there are degrees to which we have put in place stopgap measures and really worked to get you exactly what we're hearing to the best of our possible ability. What this means for the listener is that some of the sounds on our videos don't seem as loud or they don't seem as up close to you, the listener, when you check them out because we are not using those post-production effects and different things to get them into that space that other players are using. On the flip side of this, we believe that great drum sounds on a record start with great raw drum sounds. And what that means is that fixing things in the mix or starting with an okay sound and feeling like you're going to make it great later after it's recorded, we don't subscribe to that. We try to get it as fantastic as we can in the room because then you have even more headroom to work with it after the fact if you want to. These are the sorts of sounds we want to provide and share with you so that once you can recreate things in that ballpark for yourself, if you do choose to do those things to your sounds afterward, the sky's the limit. In our experience, when people are struggling with drum sounds, be they a drummer or an engineer or even like a live sound engineer, it usually boils back to some kind of problem with the actual acoustic sound of the drum itself. And putting a mic on it is not going to help. It's going to pick up anything funny going on even more than your ear already is. This means that the better the sound you start with, the more room you have to change it, adjust it, affect it after the fact, and ultimately get where you're trying to go. In the past, at times, we have over on our Patreon furnished raw sounds alongside mixed and adjusted sounds so that listeners could hear the difference and see the comparison between the two. Starting with today's video, going forward, we're going to offer up some of the examples from each video on the Patreon doing exactly this so that you can hear the same example, first raw and then with EQ and compression and a little bit of production so you can really hear where that sound can go once you start to work with it. We're not asking for every drummer and every manufacturer and every store on the internet to suddenly only offer raw drum sounds. That would be completely impractical. However, if you look at the description below our video, you will see a very accurate and specific signal chain for exactly how the sound is getting to you, along with everything else about how we record these sounds. And honestly, we just want people to stop lying about how they're getting their sounds and be a little more upfront about the processing that they're using so that with just a little bit of looking, any viewer can understand the actual nature of the sound they're hearing and not get turned around about why their drums don't sound like that. One of the central tenets of this channel is honesty. We want to make sure that what you're seeing from us, we believe to be true, and we are giving you our honest opinion, we are giving you honest sounds, and there's no trickery along the way. The fundamental ask from us for you as a viewer, now that you've made it to the end, is to look for honesty in the content that you take in on the internet. And if you feel like something feels too good to be true or is being deceptive or you're just not sure, follow your gut and find out. Because at the end of the day, we need the best information that we can possibly get. And the more accountability there is, the easier that's going to be to find. In the end, all of these decisions were made intentionally in order to give you the best possible authentic information about drum sounds with no filler in between. We don't want to give anything less than the most honest information that we can so that you can make your own decisions about your drum sounds and learn along the way in order to free up your ears and get you where you want to go.